start? On March 27, 2012, in El Cajon, California, Shaima El-Wadi heard her doorbell ring. Without hesitation, she went up and she answered her door, thinking it was a neighbor or a family member. Almost 3 hours later, her 17-year-old daughter walked into the house and found her mother lying next to with a pool of blood, unconscious. Almost 3 days later, the mother was pronounced dead. There was a note besides her also that said, "This is my country. Go back, you terrorists." Let's see. She was your average American. Only difference was that she was a Muslim and she wore the hijab. And that's her, as you can see, typical woman. Someone had hatred for her and her beliefs, which ended up in her murder. Many cases have occurred where many Muslim Americans are harassed and treated this way because of how they dress. Today I will be discussing the misunderstanding of the Muslim religion, its practice, and the truth behind it. The problems associated with the myths on women in Islam can be solved by showing the audience how Islam really does treat women. And I chose this topic because I believe that it's very important for people to see the truth behind Islam and not to be ignorant and automatically assume something because they see someone. To start off, my main point is about judgment on clothing. Here you can see is a young girl, she's wearing the hijab, and someone's trying to pull off the hijab and they say, "Hang in there, we will free you." And she's basically saying no, don't do anything. Assumption that because a woman is dressed in the hijab or the niqab or the burqa, they all assume that she was forced and it wasn't her choice. Almost 40% of Americans voted that whenever they seen a cover-up woman, they would assume that she was forced and it wasn't her choice. I don't know if you guys ever heard about a woman named Pamela Geller. She made a campaign against Islam calling for forced girls to run away and get help. And she would basically put up ads just saying, "Oh, if you need help, I'll come save you. If you don't want to be in Islam anymore, if you're brainwashed, come to me and I'll help you with everything." And she made it like being Muslim was such a bad thing when it really isn't. There was also an assumption that women who wore the hijab, the niqab, are terrorists. Like a story for me was when my mother, she wears the hijab and she wears the traditional robe that covers up her clothing. We were at an airport one time and somebody said my mother looked suspicious and they were frightened by her. We were detained for 3 hours. We missed our flight because they did a body search, a cavity, so pretty much everything just to check my mother and see if she had a bomb on her. And I can only imagine the pain that my mother felt and the shame that she felt for being judged on what she wore. Almost 35% of Americans stated that whenever they saw a covered woman, they would automatically want to go the other way because they would panic. Education and occupation. Many assume that Muslim women can't attend school. 37% of people believe that they just stay home, take care of the kids. Their husbands force them to stay home. They get beat by their husbands. Here's a cartoon that I found where a husband's telling her, "Wait, I just want to give you a lecture in metaphorical wife beating." Pretty much everyone assumes that just because a woman stays home, it's her husband who neglects her and hits her and so on. Muslim women aren't allowed to work. 55% of women actually in America do have jobs, and 25% of them are turned down because of the hijab. This is an example. Her name is Samantha Ulaf, and in 2008, she was turned down a job in Abercrombie & Fitch because of the hijab. And I know you guys know that Abercrombie & Fitch has a type of style, how you can dress when you work there. And I guess because of her headscarf, they didn't want her to work there, and they turned her down, and she ended up suing them. I have discussed the myths, and now I will show you how they are incorrect. Clothing. Muslim women have a choice. Almost 43% of women in America choose to cover up. Hijab is not oppression. Here's a picture where you see nuns, and they're dressed up, and they say they're devoted for God. But when you see Muslim women wearing it, you assume they're oppressed. But in reality, it's the same reason. They wear it because of their devotion to God. Here's a quote that is from the Quran, and it basically says, "O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of believers to draw their cloaks around them when they go abroad. That will be better so that they may be recognized and not annoyed. Allah is very forgiving and merciful." Basically, they're saying that the hijab is a choice and it's made for women to protect themselves from men who are rude and only want them for their body. Women who wear the hijab are not terrorists. My sister-in-law, who also wears the hijab, was walking the street one time and someone yelled to her, "Go back to your country, go back to the desert, or go ride your camel." They were just yelling very inappropriate things to her because of it. Another situation was a man dressed in traditional women clothing, bombed an area in Pakistan that killed at least 19 people, May 4th, 2012. This is recent. He gave Muslim women a bad name, basically by doing that, because now everyone attempts to see someone, they're going to automatically assume, oh my god, terrorists, or someone dressed up as something, we should be scared about them, or now want to get to know them because of how they're dressed. Education. Almost 55% of women in America do work, and they consist of teachers and doctors and nurses. My sister, she wears a hijab, and she's a teacher, and I have two sisters who are teachers, and one is actually a social worker, and some wear the hijab and some don't, but you never really know who's Muslim and who's not, and even if you do know, you shouldn't really judge them. This is Professor Nadia El-Ali. She's a professor of gender studies in a bunch of colleges in New York. She has books about how Arab women are connected to oppression and how people like to make up things and say they are oppressed. She actually attended many speeches to actually show people how Islam really treats women and that we're not oppressed at all. And lastly, we can attend school. 45% of Muslim women attend school compared to other races such as Hispanic, which is 40%, African Americans, which is 35%. And another example is me. I'm a Muslim American. My parents don't force me to do anything, and I attend college. In conclusion, it's hard for people to take their time and truly understand a religion, so it's easier for them to make assumptions and judge other people without really knowing. And I hope that after this speech, everyone can honestly take time to see how a religion really is with